I stood frozen in Mr. Peterson's office, my hands trembling at my sides. The family lawyer cleared his throat as my father signed the final document with a flourish. The pen scratched across the paper, each stroke feeling like a knife to my chest. My mother sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the wall behind me, refusing to meet my gaze. My brother Tyler leaned back in his chair, spinning the company keys around his finger with that infuriating smirk plastered across his face. The sound of metal clinking against metal made my stomach turn. My father finally looked up, his cold eyes meeting mine. "Talia, you need to understand something," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "You never deserved an inheritance. This company needs someone with real business sense." The words hit me like a physical blow. My chest tightened, making it hard to breathe. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. What the hell just happened to me? I stumbled out of the office, my legs barely holding me up. The door slammed behind me with a force that surprised even me. I made it to the empty parking lot before the dam broke. I screamed into the cold afternoon air, my voice raw and desperate. The sound echoed off the surrounding buildings, but I didn't care who heard. Years of memories flooded back all at once. My father praised Tyler's mediocre school projects while ignoring my perfect grades. My mother rolled her eyes every time I suggested an idea at family dinners. The countless times I'd been dismissed, overlooked, and treated like I was invisible. I collapsed against my car, sliding down until I sat on the cold pavement. My whole body shook as I whispered to myself through gritted teeth, "My name is Talia Renford." And they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Something hardened inside me at that moment. They wanted to break me. Instead, they created something far more dangerous. I was 10 years old when I realized I'd never be enough for them. I remembered standing in the kitchen, holding my science project with both hands. I'd spent weeks building a working model of the solar system, complete with lights and rotating planets. My mother glanced at it for maybe 3 seconds before turning back to her magazine. "That's nice, dear," she'd said without looking up. An hour later, Tyler showed her a half-finished poster about dinosaurs with crooked letters and messy drawings. She clapped her hands together, calling my father in to see Tyler's amazing work. They'd hung it on the refrigerator while my project sat forgotten on the counter. That night, I'd cried myself to sleep, trying to understand what I'd done wrong. The pattern continued through middle school, high school, and college. No matter how hard I worked or how much I achieved, I remained invisible. Tyler could do no wrong. I could do no right. Those childhood wounds had planted seeds deep inside me. Seeds of resentment, yes, but also of determination. I'd always been less than in their eyes. But I wasn't going to stay that way. 3 months after the lawyer's office, I threw myself into building something of my own. I started a small consulting firm from my cramped apartment, working 18-hour days on a secondhand laptop. Money was tight, painfully tight. Some nights, I survived on instant noodles and black coffee. But desperation fueled my determination in ways comfort never could. I focused on business strategy consulting, the exact field my family's company operated in. Every night, I studied their public reports, analyzed their market strategies, and noted their weaknesses. Tyler's name appeared on several disastrous decisions already, though the board seemed too polite to say anything publicly. I kept detailed notes in a locked folder on my computer. His ignorance was breathtaking. He'd inherited a thriving company and immediately started making rookie mistakes that any first-year business student would catch. The irony burned. This was the person my parents trusted with their legacy. Meanwhile, I landed my first small client, a local restaurant chain needing help with expansion. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every dollar I earned felt like proof that I could survive without them. 6 months in, I attended a charity gala my parents were hosting. I debated going, but curiosity won out. I stood near the bar, nursing a glass of wine, when I heard Tyler's voice booming across the room. He was surrounded by family friends, his face flushed with champagne and ego. "Finally running the company the way it should be run," he announced loudly. "No more playing it safe. We're going aggressive this quarter." I moved closer, pretending to admire a painting on the wall. Tyler continued bragging about his bold leadership and revolutionary ideas. The family friends nodded along, though I caught a few exchanged glances that told me they weren't buying it. As I listened, I noticed something crucial. Tyler had no idea what he was doing. His aggressive strategy was actually a textbook recipe for disaster. He planned to expand into 3 new markets simultaneously without proper research or adequate capital reserves. It was vanity disguised as ambition, arrogance packaged as confidence. For the first time since that awful day in the lawyer's office, I smiled. Tyler wasn't just incompetent. He was predictably, exploitably incompetent. The seed of revenge began to grow. My breakthrough came on a Tuesday afternoon. I'd pitched my services to Whitmore Industries, a mid-sized manufacturing company struggling with supply chain issues. The CEO, Mr. Whitmore, was a gruff man in his 60s who'd built his company from nothing. He listened to my presentation with his arms crossed, his face unreadable. When I finished, silence filled the room for what felt like forever. Then he leaned forward. "You're hired," he said simply. "When can you start?" Within 3 months, I'd restructured their entire supply chain, cutting costs by 30% and improving delivery times by half. Mr. Whitmore was thrilled. He gave me a glowing recommendation and introduced me to 3 other CEOs who needed similar help. My client list grew. My reputation spread. Industry publications started mentioning my name in articles about rising consultants to watch. The money improved too, not rich yet, but comfortable. I moved into a better apartment and bought professional clothes. More importantly, I gained something I'd never had before. Credibility in the exact industry my parents thought I'd never belong in. Each new client felt like a small victory against their judgment. I was building something they couldn't ignore. The phone call came at 11 at night. I was reviewing financial reports when my college friend Amy called. She worked at the same bank that handled my family company's accounts. "Talia, I probably shouldn't tell you this," Amy said, her voice worried. "But Tyler came in today requesting approval for a massive loan. He wants to fund some expansion projects, but the numbers don't add up. The bank approved it, but everyone's talking about how risky it looks." My pulse quickened. How risky? Put it this way, if it fails, the company could be in serious trouble. The expansion he's planning is way too ambitious for the capital structure. But your parents signed off on it, so the board didn't push back. I thanked Amy and hung up, my mind racing. I pulled up public records and financial filings, connecting the dots. Tyler was betting the entire company on an expansion into markets he didn't understand, using money the company couldn't afford to lose. My parents, blinded by their faith in their golden child, were letting him drive the company off a cliff. I sat back in my chair, a strange calm settling over me. Then I did something I'd never done before. I recorded our next family dinner conversation on my phone, capturing every detail of Tyler's incompetence. Proof for later. I couldn't help myself. 2 weeks later, I showed up at my parents' house unannounced. My mother opened the door, surprise flickering across her face before settling back into her usual cool expression. "Talia, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you and Dad," I said, keeping my voice steady. My father emerged from his study, annoyed at the interruption. I stood in their elegant living room, the same room where I'd spent my childhood feeling like an outsider, and asked the question that had haunted me for months. "Why did you exclude me? Why did you decide I didn't deserve anything?" The silence stretched. My father's face hardened. "Because you lack what it takes, Talia. You always have. Tyler understands business instincts. He understands risk and reward. You're too cautious, too analytical. That's not what builds empires." The words shattered something inside me. Not because they hurt. I'd heard variations of this my whole life. No, they shattered my last hope that maybe, deep down, they'd cared about me at all. My mother finally spoke, her voice quiet. "You should focus on your own path, dear. Let Tyler handle the family business." I left without another word. But as I drove away, I wasn't heartbroken. I was furious. They'd given me the final push I needed. I vowed to show them exactly what I was capable of. 3 weeks later, I sat across from Victoria Hayes, a legendary figure in the business consulting world. She built and sold 2 companies before turning to mentorship, and her reputation was formidable. Getting a meeting with her had taken months of persistent emails. "So, Talia," she said, studying me over her coffee, "tell me what you really want. Not the polite version. The truth." I took a breath. "I want to learn how to acquire failing businesses, how to identify weaknesses, build leverage, and take control without showing your hand too early." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't seem surprised. For the next 2 hours, we discussed strategies. She explained how to build anonymous investment vehicles, how to identify key shareholders who might be willing to sell, and how to structure deals that looked small individually but added up to real power. "The key," Victoria said as our meeting ended, "is patience. Most people expose themselves too early. They get emotional, they rush, and they lose. The winners are the ones who can wait, watch, and strike at exactly the right moment." I absorbed every word like my life depended on it, because in a way it did. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about proving that I was exactly who they said I wasn't. The news broke on a Monday morning. I was in my office when I saw the headline, "Renford Industries faces criticism after layoffs." I clicked through, my heart pounding. Tyler's risky expansion had failed spectacularly. He'd opened offices in 3 new cities simultaneously, but none of them had attracted enough business to justify the costs. Now he was forced to lay off nearly 100 employees to cover the losses. The article was damning. It quoted former employees talking about mismanagement and poor planning. Industry analysts questioned the company's leadership. The stock price had dropped 12% in one day. I sat back in my chair, staring at my computer screen. I felt a strange mix of emotions, satisfaction that I predicted this exact outcome, but also guilt over the innocent people who'd lost their jobs because of Tyler's incompetence. My phone buzzed with messages from industry contacts, all asking if I'd seen the news. Some knew about my family connection and offered sympathy. I thanked them politely but stayed quiet about my plans. This was just the beginning. I started reaching out to key players within the company, people Tyler had overlooked or disrespected, department heads, senior managers, longtime employees who remembered when the company was run properly. I didn't reveal my intentions. I just listened. Family dinners had always been awkward for me, but this one was different. I'd been invited, or rather, my mother had called and made it clear she expected me to come. I suspected they wanted to present a united family front after the bad publicity. I arrived on time, wearing a professional dress and a neutral expression. Tyler was already there, looking tired but still cocky. My parents greeted me with stiff formality. Over dinner, they talked as if nothing was wrong. My father praised Tyler's courage to take risks. My mother mentioned how these things happen in business. Tyler launched into a long explanation of why the expansion had been strategically sound but undermined by market conditions. I nodded along, asking innocent questions that made Tyler elaborate further. He didn't realize he was confessing to incompetence with every answer. My phone sat in my purse, recording everything. The conversation revealed so much. Tyler didn't understand basic financial principles. He confused revenue with profit. He blamed everyone but himself. My parents, desperate to believe in him, accepted every excuse. I stayed for 2 hours, playing the role of supportive family member. When I left, I had exactly what I needed. Proof of the pattern of incompetence that had led to the company's current struggles. My consulting firm was thriving. 18 months after starting from my apartment, I now had a small office, 3 employees, and a client list that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Revenue was strong enough that I'd started building up capital reserves. But my real focus was elsewhere. Through a carefully structured network of investment vehicles and intermediaries, I began quietly purchasing shares in Renford Industries. The stock price had dropped after Tyler's expansion disaster, making shares cheaper than they'd been in years. I started small, a few hundred shares here, 1,000 there. Nothing that would trigger reporting requirements or draw attention. I used different investment entities, each one registered under generic names that couldn't be traced back to me. Each purchase was calculated. I studied shareholder reports and tracked who was selling. older investors who'd lost confidence, institutional holders reducing their positions, disappointed board members quietly divesting. I bought from all of them slowly and patiently. By the end of my second year in business, I owned 3% of the company. It wasn't controlling stake, but it was a start. Each share I purchased felt like reclaiming something that should have been mine all along. Each purchase was a small, precise step toward my ultimate goal, taking back what they'd stolen from me. My best friend Brenna called me on a Saturday afternoon, concerned in her voice. We'd known each other since college, and she was one of the few people who knew what I was planning. "Talia, I'm worried about you," she said. "What if this backfires? What if someone figures out what you're doing before you're ready?" I was sitting in my home office, reviewing the latest shareholder documents. "I've been careful," I said. "Every investment is legitimate. Every purchase is legal. There's nothing to expose." "That's not what I mean," Brenna pressed. "I mean emotionally. What if you succeed, and it doesn't feel the way you think it will? What if you become just like them?" I was quiet for a moment, considering. "I won't," I finally said, "because I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm doing it because I can run that company better than Tyler ever could. The revenge is just a bonus." Brenna sighed but let it drop. After we hung up, I thought about her warning. Was I being reckless? Maybe. But I was also being patient, calculated, and dignified, everything Tyler wasn't. I'd spent my whole life being underestimated. Now I was using that to my advantage. They expected me to fail, to give up, to fade away. Instead, I was building something they'd never see coming until it was too late. The press conference was a disaster from the first question. I watched it streaming live from my office, along with what felt like half the business world. Tyler stood at a podium, flanked by board members, announcing a restructuring plan to address the company's recent challenges. A reporter asked about the layoffs. Tyler stumbled through an answer that blamed market volatility and unforeseen circumstances. Another reporter pressed him on the failed expansion. Tyler grew defensive, his face reddening as he insisted the strategy had been sound in principle. A third reporter asked about the company's debt levels. Tyler actually paused, clearly unsure of the exact numbers. The board member next to him had to lean over and whisper the answer. I watched the company's stock price in real time on another screen. It dropped 3% during the press conference, 5% by the end of the trading day. Social media lit up with criticism and mockery. Industry blogs published scathing analysis pieces. The consensus was clear. Renford Industries had a leadership problem. I sat in my office long after the video ended, making notes. Tyler's public humiliation was opening doors for me. Shareholders were losing confidence. Key employees were updating their resumes. The opportunity was growing with every mistake he made. The industry conference was held at a downtown hotel, bringing together hundreds of business leaders from across the region. I hadn't planned on attending until I saw Tyler's name on the speaker list. Curiosity and opportunity drew me there. I kept a low profile, networking with other consultants and potential clients. Then, near the refreshment table, I saw him. Tyler stood with a group of executives, his voice loud and confident as always. I debated walking away, but something made me approach. "Tyler," I said calmly, "good to see you." He turned, surprise flashing across his face. For a moment I thought he might be rude, but we were in public. He forced a smile. "Talia, what are you doing here?" "I'm a business consultant now," I said simply. "I have several clients in the industry." Tyler's smile turned patronizing. "That's nice. Small businesses, I assume? It's good to start somewhere." I nodded, biting back a response. He had no idea that my small consulting firm was now respected enough to compete for major contracts. He didn't know I'd been featured in industry publications. He didn't know I was quietly buying up shares in his company. He underestimated me completely, just like he always had. "Good luck with everything," I said, keeping my voice pleasant. "The company seems to be going through some changes." Tyler's expression darkened slightly, but he recovered. "Just growing pains. Nothing I can't handle." I walked away, satisfaction bubbling beneath my calm surface. Let him stay blind. It would make the final moment so much sweeter. The email arrived from an unexpected source. Harold Brennan had been CFO of Renford Industries for 15 years before Tyler forced him into early retirement 6 months ago. His message was brief. Ms. Renford, I understand you're in consulting now. I'd like to discuss a potential opportunity. We met at a quiet restaurant across town. Harold was in his late 50s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Your brother is running that company into the ground, he said bluntly. The board knows it. The senior staff knows it. But your parents won't hear criticism of their golden boy. I listened carefully, saying nothing. I've spent my career building that company alongside your father, Harold continued. I can't watch it destroyed by incompetence. So I'm going to ask you something direct. Are you planning to make a move? The question hung in the air. I studied Harold's face, weighing risks against rewards. Finally, I spoke. If I were, hypothetically, would I have your support? You'd have more than that, Harold said. There are at least 6 former executives and board members who would back you. We've all watched Tyler's disasters. We know what real leadership looks like. Over the next 2 hours, Harold outlined the internal politics of the company, who supported Tyler out of loyalty versus who supported him out of fear, which board members were wavering, which shareholders were actively looking to sell. When we parted, I had a network of secret allies. The tide was turning. The anonymous email arrived in my inbox on a Wednesday morning. The sender was clearly someone inside Renford Industries. They used internal jargon and reference meetings I couldn't have known about. The email contained detailed financial documents showing Tyler's worst decisions. Overpayment for office leases. Contracts signed with vendors who were clearly overcharging. A planned acquisition of a smaller competitor that made no strategic sense and would drain capital reserves. I didn't know who sent it, but I knew why. Someone inside wanted Tyler gone and saw me as the solution. I spent the next week analyzing every document, cross-referencing with public information and my own research. The picture that emerged was damning. Tyler hadn't just made mistakes. He'd been systematically mismanaging the company for nearly 2 years. The only reason things hadn't collapsed yet was the strong foundation my father and people like Harold had built over decades. I used this information to refine my purchase strategy. I identified shareholders who would be most concerned about these revelations. I positioned myself to be ready when the next crisis hit, because there would be a next crisis. Tyler was too incompetent for there not to be. That night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, staring at the city lights. A private thought crossed my mind. When I didn't share with anyone, soon it will all be mine, legally, ethically, finally mine. The client was Meridian Tech, one of the industry's biggest players. Losing their account would cost Renford Industries nearly $3 million in annual revenue. I learned about it from a former colleague who still worked at the company. Tyler had personally handled the contract renewal negotiations and had somehow managed to offend Meridian's CEO with his arrogance and lack of preparation. The news hit the business press within days. More bad publicity, more questions about leadership, more damage to the stock price. I watched from a distance, fighting the urge to feel satisfied. This wasn't about Tyler's suffering. It was about proving that I was right. Every failure of his vindicated my belief that I could do better, that I should have been given the chance in the first place. I spent that evening reviewing my strategic timeline. I now controlled nearly 8% of the company through various investment vehicles. Harold and his network of former executives were ready to support me publicly when the time came. The company was weakening. The board was growing desperate. Everything was aligning. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call friends to share my progress. I simply prepared for the next phase. Patience had brought me this far. Patience would carry me the rest of the way. The meeting with my investment advisors took place in a conference room overlooking the city. 3 lawyers and 2 financial experts reviewed the final structure of my acquisition plan. You'll need to disclose your holdings once you pass 10%, one lawyer explained. That's when things become public. I understand, I said. What's the earliest we can move to a majority position? The financial advisor pulled up a spreadsheet. Based on current market conditions and shareholder sentiment, we estimate you could secure 41% within 3 months of going public. That assumes cooperation from Harold Brennan's network and the institutional investors who've indicated interest. 41%. A controlling stake. Enough to oust Tyler and take over the board. Everything I'd worked for since that day in the lawyer's office. Do it, I said. File the disclosure forms tomorrow. We go public with the first round of purchases. The room fell silent. This was the point of no return. Once I filed those forms, everyone would know, my family, the board, the whole industry. There would be no more hiding, no more quiet accumulation. It would be war. But I was ready. I'd spent 2.5 years building to this moment. Every sacrifice, every late night, every calculated move had been leading here. I signed the documents with a steady hand, thinking about how far I'd come from that broken woman in the parking lot. I smiled with quiet satisfaction, feeling the weight of what I'd built. Composure and dignity had been my weapons. Now came the victory. The call came at 6 a.m. My mother's voice was shrill, panicked in a way I'd never heard before. Talia, what have you done? We just heard. You own stock in the company? How much? What are you planning? I'd been expecting this call, but hearing the fear in her voice still sent a strange feeling through my chest. Not quite satisfying, but close. I'm an investor, Mother, I said calmly. A significant one. The SEC filings are public record if you want details. Don't play games with me. Her composure cracked. Your father wants to know if you're trying to sabotage your own family. I actually laughed. Sabotage? No. I'm trying to save a company that Tyler's been destroying. There's a difference. My father grabbed the phone. His voice was hard, threatening. If you try anything, Talia will fight you. The board supports Tyler. You'll embarrass yourself. We'll see, I said simply. I've spent 2 years building support while Tyler spent 2 years proving he's incompetent. Let's find out whose judgment people trust. I hung up before he could respond. My hand shook slightly, but not from fear. From adrenaline. The secret was out. No more hiding. My parents called 3 more times that day. I didn't answer. I was too busy preparing for the next phase. Harold Brennan and the former executives were already reaching out to current board members, building support for my eventual takeover proposal. Media outlets were calling for comments. Industry analysts were writing speculation pieces about the family drama. The walls were closing in on Tyler, and I was the one pushing them. Tyler held an emergency investor call 3 days after my disclosure. I listened in anonymously, just another voice on the conference line. His confidence was forced, his tone defensive from the first word. Some members of my family have decided to make a financial investment in our company, he said, not mentioning me by name. While I appreciate their newfound interest, nothing changes our strategic direction. I maintain full support of the board and our shareholders. A voice interrupted, one of the institutional investors I'd been courting. Mr. Renford, can you address concerns about the company's financial performance over the past 18 months? The stock price has declined nearly 30% under your leadership. Tyler stumbled through an answer, blaming market conditions and temporary setbacks. Another investor pressed him on the failed expansion. Another asked about the Meridian Tech loss. With each question, Tyler's composure slipped. I'd already secured commitments from key shareholders. Harold had lined up 3 board members willing to support a leadership change. The votes were there. Tyler just didn't know it yet. After the call ended, I sat in my office reviewing my notes. Tyler still thought he was in control. He still believed his arrogance and his parents' support would protect him. He was wrong. The tension was building to a breaking point. Every piece was in position. Every ally was ready. Now came the final move, the one that would change everything. The press release went out at 9 a.m. Talia Renford announces formal acquisition proposal for controlling stake in Renford Industries. Within an hour, my phone exploded with calls. News outlets, industry analysts, former colleagues. Everyone wanted a comment, an explanation, or a confirmation that this was really happening. I'd prepared a statement with my lawyers. After careful consideration and consultation with shareholders, I am formally proposing to acquire a controlling stake in Renford Industries. I believe the company needs new leadership to return to its former success and to honor the legacy my father built before recent mismanagement damaged its reputation. I have the support of former executives, key board members, and major shareholders who share my vision. The business world went into a frenzy. This wasn't just a corporate takeover. It was a family war playing out in public. Articles appeared within hours analyzing the drama. Some painted me as vindictive. Others portrayed me as a savior rescuing a failing company. I didn't care about the narrative. I cared about the result. Tyler's response came that afternoon. A hastily written statement claiming I was unqualified and motivated by jealousy. But his words rang hollow. The damage was done. Investors were openly questioning his leadership. Board members were accepting my calls. The momentum had shifted completely. I watched his smug grin vanish during a televised interview that evening. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. He was finally realizing what I'd known all along. He was in over his head, and now everyone could see it. The shareholder vote happened on a Tuesday morning in a conference room packed with investors, board members, and media representatives. The tension was suffocating. Tyler sat on one side with my parents, their faces masks of fury and denial. I sat on the other with Harold and my legal team, calm and prepared. The vote wasn't even close. 63% of shareholders supported my acquisition. Board members who'd privately expressed doubts about Tyler finally felt safe enough to act. Institutional investors chose competence over loyalty. Employees who'd suffered under Tyler's mismanagement saw hope for real change. When the results were announced, the room erupted. Some people cheered. Others looked shocked. My parents sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Tyler stared at the table, his face drained of color. The family legacy they denied me, the company they'd said I'd never deserve, was now mine. Not through inheritance, through skill, strategy, and sheer determination. I stood and shook hands with the board members, accepting their congratulations with professional grace. Harold clapped me on the shoulder, genuine pride in his eyes. Your father would be proud, he said quietly. The real one, the one who built this company the right way. I didn't gloat. I didn't make a speech rubbing their faces in my victory. I simply signed the final documents, accepted control, and got to work. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about proving I'd been right all along. The official signing ceremony happened 1 week later. Photographers captured the moment I put my name on the purchase documents, making the acquisition legally binding. The company, Renford Industries, the business my father had built from nothing, was now mine. I stood in the boardroom afterward, looking out at the office floor below. Employees were already working with renewed energy. The announcement of new leadership had boosted morale overnight. I'd spent the week meeting with department heads, listening to their concerns, and outlining my vision for the company's future. My first act was reversing Tyler's worst decisions. I canceled the ill-advised acquisition he'd been planning. I renegotiated the predatory vendor contracts. I brought back 2 executives Tyler had forced out. My parents attended the ceremony, but left without speaking to me. Tyler didn't show up at all. I'd heard through Harold that he'd taken a vacation to process the humiliation. The inheritance they denied me was now mine, earned, not given. The legacy they'd said I didn't deserve was under my control. And unlike Tyler, I actually knew what to do with it. That evening, I called Brenna. It's done, I said simply. I own it. She was quiet for a moment. How does it feel? I thought about the question. Like justice, I finally said. Not revenge. Justice. 6 months later, I stood in my corner office at company headquarters, looking out over the city as the sun set. The transformation had been remarkable. Under my leadership, Renford Industries had not only stabilized but was thriving. Profits were up 18%. We'd won back the Meridian Tech account after I personally apologized for Tyler's behavior and presented a comprehensive new service package. Employee satisfaction surveys showed dramatic improvement. 3 industry publications had written profiles about the turnaround, praising the new vision and strategic leadership. Some articles mentioned the family drama, most focused on results. My relationship with my parents remained complicated. They'd eventually reached out, not to apologize, but to grudgingly acknowledge that I'd succeeded where Tyler had failed. I'd established firm boundaries with them, making it clear that our relationship would be professional, not personal. They'd made their choice years ago. I'd made mine now. Tyler had found a position at another company, something middle management where his incompetence could be contained. We didn't speak. As for me, I discovered something surprising. The victory felt good, but not in the way I'd expected. The satisfaction didn't come from their pain. It came from proving to myself what I was capable of. I'd built something real, something lasting, something earned through competence, strategy, and unshakable determination. I was calm, accomplished, untouchable, and fully in control. Not because I destroyed them, but because I'd built something better than they ever could have imagined. That was the real victory. And it was enough.